Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today for this important discussion on the resilience and the future of the Israel economy. Our discussion will begin shortly. My name is Michal Kopel, and I'm the CEO of SRI Investment Club and former CEO of the Israel Director Association. A quick note before we begin. Israeli Bonds and SRI Group invited today's speakers to share their insights with you. Israeli Bonds and SRI brings today speakers to share not only the insight with you, they are not acting as underwriters, advisors, or consultants for those speakers or their entities, and we haven't conducted any analysis of the information being presented. We encourage you to consult with advisors before making any investments or decisions. We would like to be on time throughout the events, so I will start with the speakers. Let me introduce the first speakers that with us today, Mr. Dani Naveh, Israeli Bond President and the CEO. Good to see you, Dani. Of knowing Dani while he was still chairman of one of the Israeli largest insurance companies. Dani Naveh is not only the president and the CEO of the Israeli Bonds. Dani, a former Israeli candidate minister and business entrepreneur. Mr. Naveh has led Israeli Bonds to record-breaking sales, significance enhancing its role in Israeli finance economy. Under his leadership, Israeli Bonds achieved about 2.7 billion in global sales in 2023, accounting for 25% of the Israeli total foreign debt raised that year. Mr. Naveh's vision has strengthened bonds and with Jewish community, financial institutions, and Israeli economic resilience. He brings extensive experience from both the Israeli governments and the private sector, including serving as Israeli Minister of Health, Chairman of the Board of Kalal Insurance, and founding a venture capital group focused on healthcare innovation investments. Please, Dani.
Thank you so much, Michal, for this kind introduction. It's really a pleasure for me to be part of this meeting today, and I would like to thank SRI and especially to you, Michal, and Zichlinskey, SRI Chairman, for having this joint meeting with Israel Bonds. And we cannot, I guess, start this meeting today without expressing our happiness, first of all, at the return home of Romy, Doron, and Emily, and we are all looking forward to see the rest of the hostages returning home soon. Dear friends, for 7 decades, Israel Bonds' mission has been to support Israel's economy. We have raised during the years more than $53 billion globally, ushering Israel's economy to a vibrant startup nation, as we all see and know. Yet, since October 7th, everything for us, our mission, has felt more vital, more urgent, more important. And I can tell you that October 7th, 2023, has galvanized support for Israel like never before. As Michal has mentioned, we started a special campaign for Israel on October 7th. We raised in one quarter, the last quarter of 2023, we raised $1 billion in 3 months. And since that heinous day of October 7th, I'm proud and grateful to share with you that we have raised more than $3.7 billion globally for Israel. This is really about 3 times our average annual sales before 2023. And these funds have been really an essential lifeline in ensuring Israel's economy resilience. We have here today some of Israel bonds investors from all over the world. By the way, not from Israel, because we cannot sell and we are not pitching for sales of Israel bonds in Israel. And each and every one of our investors can take pride in knowing that he or she plays such an important role in supporting Israel at this important time of need. And our investors comes from all walks of life. Retail investors, institutional investors, from bar mitzvah students to local government investors all around the world. And if you ask the average, I would say, or the typical investor in Israel bonds, why have you invested in Israel bonds? You can hear first and foremost, it's a financial investment, it's a financial decision. And people who invest in Israel bonds can expect to get strong and steady return on the investment. But everyone would tell you that investment in Israel bonds is not just a financial decision. When you invest in bonds, you really support the United States of America, best ally in the Middle East, and you can really make an impact on Israel's economy resilience. And in this context of Israel's economy resilience, I'm really looking forward to listen to our speakers today and to the discussion that we are going to have. And I will just make two brief comments. First, if you take a look at the track record of Israel's economy, you can see that following previous crises, round of wars, and different big crises that Israel has faced in the past, the Israeli economy resilience, the Israeli economy recovery was fast and strong. Even, by the way, during days that the Israeli economy was much more fragile, the debt-GDP ratio was much higher, and the GDP of Israel was much smaller. And if we take a look at the current situation, I think that we can already see some positive signs when we take a look at the Israeli economy fundamentals. You can see already some positive signs, for example, in the level of high-tech investment rounds that took place during 2024, the number of M&A deals. And as we know, the high-tech is always the growth engine of the Israeli economy. If we take a look at the performance of the TASE compared to S&P, you can see that we have some positive signs to be more optimistic, and I'm really looking forward to hear from the rest, for all our speakers today. And thank you again, Nir. Thank you, Michal, for this great joint meeting that we are having today between SRI and Israel Bonds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dani. I think it's amazing numbers you just raised. And now let me introduce, please, the second speaker, my partner and the chairman of SRI Investment Club, Mr. Nir Zichlinskey. Nir is a leading entrepreneur. He's not only the chairman of SRI Investment Club, he's also one of the founders of the Israel Director Association, specializing in business growth and corporate responsibility. Please, Nir.
Thank you, Michal. Thank you, Dani, for this conference. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted and excited to open this important conference, which addresses one of the most critical topics of our time, the Israeli economy after the recent events. The Israeli economy faced immense challenges over the past year, and demonstrate especially resilience from the banking system to the high-tech industry and even the traditional industry, which continue to operate under the most complex conditions. As the owner of industrial companies, some of them in the defense sector, and as someone who has undertaken significant reserve duty in the recent years, I can confidently say that we have managed to sustain growth and progress while maintaining the security of the state and its civilians. The true meaning of the current crisis lies in our unity as Israelis. After October 7th, we discovered our strengths not only in warfare, but also in leading significant economy initiatives, such as the Next October project led by Izar Shai. This initiative aimed to honor of those who sacrificed their lives for our country, so we can open new doors for startups and innovation. Additionally, I want to emphasize the critical role of merger and acquisition in Israeli market as a key driver of growth. M&A activities are not just an opportunity to streaming companies and create synergy, but also significant phase for market expansion, improved competitiveness, and the enhancement of Israel's economy infrastructure. In an area where the global landscape is rapidly changing, merger and acquisition are strategy tools for maintaining relevance and economic resilience. The business sector contribute 500 million shekel to the war efforts that leaves no one behind. At SRI Group and also in SRI Investment Club, we are committed to integrating values of social and corporate responsibility into all our activities, believing this will be the foundation for healthy economy. I'm confident that today's discussion will deepen our understanding of how we can continue to develop our economy by incorporating values of responsibility, unity, and also collaboration while seizing the opportunities presented by merger and acquisition in both and local and international markets. I wish us and you all successful and productive conference. Thank you for your participation. Thank you, Michal. And you can go on.
Thank you, Nir. Thank you, Nir. Now I'm honored to introduce General Yaakov Amidror. Amidror was a national security advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu and chairman of the National Security Council. He served for 36 years in the senior IDF post, including commander of the military colleges, military security, to the Minister of Defense, director of the Intelligence Analysis Division in the Military Intelligence, and Chief Intelligence Officer of the Northern Command. Please, Amidror.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and Commander of Nir Zichlinskey. One of my jobs. I mean, I'm proud. I want to begin with kind of description of the situation of the state of Israel after the 15 months of war, and what remain that we have to continue in the future, and to finish with a few words about the economy. Look, the Iranians build around the state of Israel ring of fire. The idea was that the Iranians will have enough proxies strong enough to crumble Israel when Iran is away 1,500 kilometers from Israel, and the proxies will do the job of crumbling Israel. What happened during the war is the strategy of the Iranians collapsed almost totally. They lost Hamas as a proxy. They lost many capabilities of Hezbollah. And Hezbollah today is more a problem than an asset. They lost the bridge to Hezbollah when Syria became anti-Iranian state. And they didn't succeed to bring into the war not the Palestinians in the West Bank and not the militias in Iraq and in Syria that theoretically had been controlled by Iran. Hezbollah suffered huge blow. They still have capabilities. They are not the same situation of Hamas. They have much more capabilities than Hamas today. They had 10 times more capabilities before the war. But Hezbollah doesn't have the leadership that it had. And Nasrallah was the center of gravity within the axis of which was built by the Iranians. And they lost many capabilities to launch long-range missiles into Israel. The intelligence, the combination between good intelligence and fantastic air force made the difference in the capabilities of the of Hezbollah. Hamas was distracted. Hamas is not a threat to Israel. No one asked what Hamas reaction will be because Israel is killing the leader of Hamas, either it is in Tehran or Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. Why no one asked the question? Because as a threat to Israel, Hamas is not relevant anymore. Hamas is still very relevant inside the Gaza Strip. And this is why the IDF will have to continue to smash Hamas in the future. But today, the situation of Hamas is such that Hamas is not a threat to Israel. They have very, very few missiles to launch. They don't have the system to produce it, and so on and so forth. And they lost almost the whole leadership. From time to time, the Yemenite Houthis sent the launch missiles into Israel, and the alarm system in Israel is sending us all to shelters. But the level of success to harm Israel by Houthis is very, very minimal, almost none. And the fact that they are blocking the Bab el-Mandeb shipping area is relevant less to Israel. It is much more relevant to Egypt, to Sudan, and other countries. Only 20% of the export-import of Israel is going through this area. And we found ways to bypass it. Yes, it costs some money, but it's something which is not really hurting the economy of Israel. And we understand, and that was our decision, that the problem will be solved not by us. It's, by the way, people don't know, Sana'a is longer distance from Israel than Tehran. So that will not be solved by Israel. We will act there from time to time just to show that someone who is launching missiles into Israel will suffer, but we understand it is not it is someone else's problem to solve. The big failure of Sinwar in the 7th of October was his assessment that the Palestinians and Judea and Samaria and the West Bank will enter the war. It didn't happen. And what we are doing now, including today, when we are speaking, there is a big operation in Jenin. The job of the IDF is to make sure that it is not going to happen in Judea and Samaria. And for that, we have to work very hard to kill as many of Hamas terrorists as possible and to arrest the others. Iran is doing huge effort to bring in money and weapons by struggling from Jordan. Up till now, we succeeded to put our hands on most of these people, and the level of terrorism from the West Bank didn't become a problem through the war. But we have to continue to work there in the future. But that was probably the main mistake of Sinwar. He didn't succeed to bring in the Palestinians in the West Bank. What remained for us in the future? First, if we want to find a solution which will allow someone to come in to help to rebuild Gaza, and for that we need they will need an investment of, I don't know, $50 billion. We have to continue to smash Hamas. Otherwise, Hamas is as strong as Hamas today will not allow anyone to enter to Gaza and to take control. They will agree to agreements in which someone is doing the civilian side and they will continue to improve their terrorist capabilities, but they are not going to give up their military assets, and we will have to do it by force. I'm now in Britain. They try to find with Americans and others kind of solutions, and the conclusion is very clear. If Hamas will remain as strong as it is today, no solution will be found for Gaza. The second area in which we will have to work very hard is Lebanon. We have good agreement. The agreement is good not because what was signed by Hezbollah, but because of the side letter signed with the Americans. According to the language of this side letter, the IDF can react immediately without announcing anyone if there is something that we identify that might lead to endanger Israeli forces or Israel, meaning every violation of the agreement in the South Lebanon, or something that we might lose the ability to take care for example, a convoy somewhere that we will lose when it is going to go to Shiite area in which we cannot be identified. All the other issues we can complain to the apparatus which was under American control in Beirut, and the Lebanese army is supposed to do whatever is needed. If they don't, we have the freedom to react, and we will have to continue to collect the intelligence to understand what's going on and to react forcefully whenever we identify a violation of the agreement. This is what we have what was agreed by the previous administration. It was agreed by the new administration as well. So we are safe in this side that we have the support of the Americans to this system, which is very important for Israel, because slowly we want to bring back all the Israelis which became kind of refugees in Israel. It's around 80,000 people, and the damage is huge damage, and we have to invest there, I believe, between 15 and 20 billion shekel just to recover the area and to rebuild it, and to be sure that, like in the south, all the citizens of Israel will go back to their homes. In the south, by the way, I think today it's 90% of those who had been there in the 7th of October. And the main threat to Israel in the future, or the main concern of Israel in the future, is Iran. Iran, because we don't want Iran to go to be nuclear. And they have the capacity to do it. They did many important steps in the enrichment side. They didn't finish yet the weaponization stage, so we have a year or two. But here we need to coordinate it with the new administration in Washington. It cannot be done without coordination. What is the level of cooperation which will be achieved in this coordination? I don't know. It very much depends on the dialogue between us and the United States of America. The Americans have their own concerns, and they have kind of a grand plan to bring Saudi Arabia in, and for us, more important than Saudi Arabia is to neutralize Iran. So we will deal with the new administration how to achieve both if it's possible. It is not going to be easy. It's going to be very complicated, but we know that we have supporters in Washington within the new regime, the new administration, and we understand that we have to cooperate and to coordinate with the new president, which has history of supporting Israel, and we will see. You know, it's a new administration, you have to learn it, but Iran is the main concern of Israel, and that should be done, as I said, with the coordination with the United States of America. What level of cooperation? Good question. And as I said, Judah and Samaria, the West Bank, is a big challenge. We are investing many forces there to be sure that that not be ignited, not by the Israelis, by Jewish side, and not by the Palestinian side. We do whatever is needed. This is the big picture of the Middle East. We don't know yet what will be the consequences of the change of the regime in Syria. It's a huge change. For Hezbollah and Iran, it's a huge blow because they lost the ability to bridge between Iran and Hezbollah. That was the most important part of the bridge, going from Iran through Iraq, Syria into the Mediterranean. Does not exist anymore. The new Syria is an enemy of Iran and Hezbollah. They butchered them when they had been the rebels, and now they are the new regime, and they are not going to forgive. So this, from our point of view, it's a very good result. What will be the character of the new axis, which is connected Damascus to Turkey? It's a good question that we don't know an answer to. What will be the character of the new regime? They came from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and so on and so forth. Will they change as they declare that they are changing them? Let us see. In the meantime, we made two important steps. One, we destroy probably 80–90% of the Syrian military capability. So if they want to build a force against Israel, they will begin very low. And the second one, we move around 10 kilometers to the east in the Golan Heights, so we will be in a better position to defend Israel. It's cards for the future. What will happen with this within this area? It's a good question. We don't have an answer. We are watching, we are learning, and we are preparing ourselves. And at the end, and I hope that we have dialogue with these people. But at the end, it will be their decision how they want to continue as children of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, or to build a new family called the Syrian state, which will be totally different from both. I had the honor to take part in a committee which allocated around 130 billion shekel in 10 years to the defensive budget. It's huge money. We were very specific where we think that should be invested. One of the areas is more to achieve more independence in our capabilities to produce in Israel weapon systems, ammunition, and so on. Israel is investing huge money. We will raise the budget to around 6 and even more out of the GNP, 6%, probably more, close to 7, out of the GNP. Huge burden on Israeli citizens. It is not going to be easy, but it is well understood after the 7th of October and from the lessons of the war that we need to do it. We have to make to guarantee that Israel will have the ability to fight more independently. We will continue to buy aeroplanes and submarines and so on outside Israel, but when it is coming to munitions, sophisticated elements that we want to control and to build it in Israel, so no one can put pressure on us and say, I'm not providing you. And other areas that Israel should be stronger. And I believe that within 5 years, Israel, from that point of view, will be in a different situation. And I think it's very important, but you have to understand that the burden on Israeli citizens is huge. And we will feel it, of course, in our everyday life and in the future. In the 3rd month of the war, I flew to New York to meet a group of Jews and non-Jews and to speak about the situation. And the last question that I was asked by the moderator was what we here in the diaspora can do to help Israel. My answer was that we don't expect them, like in the War of Independence, to volunteer to the IDF. We have enough inside Israel to support these needs of the IDF. But the big test of the state of Israel during the war and for sure after the war will be the ability of Israel to revive the economy, because if we want in the future to be in a position in which our economy can take the burden of security, is reviving the economy. Reviving the economy means to invest in Israel. Every way that you can invest in Israel will be more than welcome. Israel needs it now. In our position now, in our situation now, the economy is the big test of Israel after the war and during the war. So I was more than privileged to speak to you as a group of people who are investing in Israel and encourage you to continue it in the future.
Thank you so much, Amidror. I think it was important words you said, and I feel stronger after what you just mentioned here. And I think it is possible to get the impressions of the Israel national resilience from your words. And in the following webinar, we will hear how this is reflected in the economy of the Israeli system. Now I have the honor to introduce Professor Ehud Menipaz, International Committee Chairman of SRI, and Professor Emeritus at Ben-Gurion University in the Negev, and also associate in the Engineering and Architect Israeli Associations. Please, Professor.
Thank you, Michal. Good afternoon, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for this critical and forward-looking discussion on the resilience and future of the Israeli economy. Before we start the panel discussion, and as Dani mentioned earlier, let us all acknowledge with thanks the release of our 3 hijacked girls. Welcome home, heroes. Welcome home, the children of Israel. As we gather here during the recent conflict, we are reminded of a simple and profound truth. The strength of a nation is not only measured by its ability to endure hardship, by its ability to rebuild, innovate, and thrive in the face of adversity. Israel has always exemplified this resilience, as it was mentioned before. My name is Ehud Menipaz. I'm a descendant of a Biluim Aliyah, an event comparable to the Mayflower's pilgrimage, America's significant historical landmark. My family has arrived in Israel in 1882 and settled the Upper Galilee. These settlements were the reason that after World War I, Lord Sykes and Count Pico included the Upper Galilee within the borders of what was to become later the State of Israel, including all the water resources of Israel, the Jordan, the Dan, Hatzbani, and Banyas rivers. As was mentioned, I'm a professor emeritus at Ben-Gurion University and have been serving as a dean in various academic institutions. I'm also the chairman, board of governors of the National Association of Engineers, Architects, and Academics in the Technological Sciences, and we have many of them in Israel, and a former senior partner with Ernst & Young International. For 1.5 centuries, my family has launched tens of ventures in Israel in a variety of industries, contributing to the security and the socio-economic development of the country. Some of them are present with us today. It is indeed a pleasure to address you, asking you to join Israel and the Jewish people further into our journey towards peace and prosperity in the State of Israel. The challenges of war, especially this war, are undeniable, but they've also historically been followed by remarkable periods of recovery and growth in Israel. More on that later. This is a country built on a foundation of ingenuity, determination, and a relentless pursuit of excellence, particularly in sectors like technology, defense, agriculture, cyber, water technology, medicine, and renewable energy, industries that continue to shape the global economy. Israel's history shows that moments of challenge are often catalysts for transformation and progress. We will discuss in this panel the strength of Israel's economic fundamentals, the strategic initiatives underway to rebuild and advance, and why now more than ever is the time to invest in the future of this remarkable nation. Let's get started. Let me introduce the distinguished panel members that are with us today. We've got Mr. Stuart Garawitz, Vice President of National Sales at Israel Bonds, who leads a team driving U.S. annual sales exceeding $2 billion. Since 2011, he has helped generate $18 billion in sales, expanded investor opportunities, and grown the U.S. investor base by over 50%. Mr. Garawitz regularly engages with top leaders, including governors, financial executives, and senior Israeli officials. With us today, we also have Ms. Sarit Berman, Head of Research for the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and we've got Dr. Eyal Argov, the Head of Macroeconomics and Policy Division of the Bank of Israel, and Ms. Hanna Pri-Zan, the Chairperson of Israeli Experience. Dear panel members, as we address the issue of Israel's economy the day after, allow me to share with you some of the findings of a worldwide research I'm conducting for the past 26 years on entrepreneurship and innovation in Israel and overseas, sampling annually about 90% of the world's GDP and 75% of the world's population. First, Israel has a total early-stage entrepreneurial activity rate of 9%, higher than most developed nations. Furthermore, the entrepreneurship activity within organizations, like Mobileye and others, upwards of 10%, has doubled during the past 5 years or so. Second, Israel excels in entrepreneurial and innovation culture. To wit, Israel ranks among the top 3 globally in perception of entrepreneurial opportunities, where 85% of the population sees entrepreneurship as a good career choice. Third, there are approximately 6,000 active startups in Israel as we speak, making it the country with the highest number of startups per capita globally. Fourth, Israel leads in technological innovation. About 5% of GDP is spent on research and development, the highest in the world. For example, the OECD average is 2.7%. Fifth, Israel leads in cybersecurity exports, capturing approximately 10% of the global market share, with notable contributions to fintech and artificial intelligence, and nearly 25% of global artificial intelligence startups, which are influenced or supported by Israeli technology. Finally, we have a highly skilled and motivated workforce. 50% of our workforce has higher education, with a strong emphasis on STEM, and Israel ranked number 1 globally for researchers per capita. Thus, let us hear now what the distinguished panel we have assembled today have to say regarding Israel's economy the day after. I'm going to start, with your permission, with a question to Mr. Stuart Garawitz, Vice President, National Sales, Israel Bonds. Stuart, as the head of U.S. sales for Israel Bonds, can you share your experience and insights on the investment community's response after October 7, the outlook ahead, as well as the recent protests against Israel bonds? Stuart, please.
Well, thank you, Professor, and thank you for inviting me to join this panel. It's a great question, and if I can just put this into some context, Israel Bonds was created 74 years ago, and it was done so essentially for the economic development for the state of Israel. We're a broker-dealer, we're not a charity, and as Dani mentioned earlier, we've raised in excess of $53 billion worldwide since inception, with all interest and principal paid in full and on time. So we have quite a large following, and we continue to have a strong following. But specifically to your question, we had already raised $1 billion as of October 1st. When the horrific attacks took place on the 7th, as Dani mentioned, we put together a very strong plan. We spoke to the Ministry of Finance, we spoke to, of course, the government, and they asked us to raise significantly more money and to do it quickly. So between October 7th and December 31st of 23, we raised an additional $1.5 billion. So we're totaling, so therefore for 2023, we raised $2.5 billion. So the question you may ask, well, where did this money come from? Well, we reached out to our institutional clients at states, counties, cities, municipalities, banks, insurance companies. We reached out to our retail clientele, and that's individuals, federations, foundations, and others. And so with that money, we were able to raise a significantly a greater amount than we typically raise, which is $1 billion a year. This year, we've raised, I should say this year, 24, we raised an additional $2 billion. So over the last 2 years, we raised $4.5 billion, but typically we raise $2 billion. So to answer your question, the investment community knows that Israel bonds is a great investment, but this amount of money, the additional amount of money, was there to show their support for the state of Israel. And clearly, it represented by the numbers. So the second part of your question is, based on these results, clearly we set a new level of expectation, so much so that the Ministry of Finance has set a goal for this year, 2025, of $1.7 billion. And that's our largest goal ever. So I have to say the outlook is strong, we're very optimistic, and we hope to do even more. However, the last part of your question is probably the most interesting part. Raising money is something we're very proud of. But something we never saw before, we talked about it, we heard about it, was BDS. And so it was kind of under the radar. But in January of 2024, we started to see it surface. And what do I mean by that? These anti-Israel bond groups came together, and they actually created an acronym, if we may, called Break the Bonds. They realized how much money and we raised, the great success we've had. How did they stop it? Well, so what do? They do what I call the BIT, B-I-T, bully, intimidate, and threaten our investors. That means they showed up at our offices to let us know they know where we are. They demonstrated at our events. They showed up at treasurers' meetings to try to intimidate them. And through many of their proxies, they printed absolute falsehoods, lies against Israel bonds to stop this investment. So who are these people? Well, we've been talking, as I mentioned, about BDS, but these are people who've been funded by Iran and Qatar and others for the last 10 to 15 years. Well, you may be a lawyer, you may be a doctor. These people are protesters, and that's what they do for a living. Do you wonder how they came together so quickly after the attacks and so organized? They've been practicing for the last 10, 15 years. And when you think of the college campuses and the protests, that didn't just happen overnight. That's the same group of people. And so when you think of the Tenenbaum building at Columbia University, but then you think about the professorships, that came from Iran and Qatar and other Middle Eastern actors. And this is what they've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. They may not change your mind or my mind or others, but they're going after the youth to try to change their minds in the future. So I have to tell you that all that they've done and all that they've tried to do essentially has backfired. The more they protested, the more our investors bought. You can see that in the numbers. The more our treasurers bought, the more they were threatened, the more they came in and made greater investments. So I can tell you that we will continue to do whatever is necessary. And as Dani and Naveh mentioned earlier, we now represent 25% of Israel's foreign debt. And lastly, I heard the Major General speak about the amount of money that will be needed in the future for the state of Israel. And I assure you that Israel Bonds, with the support from its retail clients and new clients, institutional clients, we will be there to do whatever is necessary to help the state of Israel now and in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. I have to tell you, I took note of your acronyms, BIT. I certainly appreciate the fact that you are in the front line, so to speak, and I'm assuming that's not very easy. Let me contribute another 2 cents to what you said. I say it as a dean and as an academician. I noticed that presidents of Ivy League universities had by law to appear publicly and state their opinion about what was happening to the Jewish boys and girls on campuses. I also noticed the students at Columbia and other Ivy League universities demonstrating against us, big time. But to me, it was rather interesting to find out that we did not hear from the rank and file faculty. We did not hear from the deans or department chairs. And I think that only indicates what you possibly saw yourself, is the fact that these particular people are basically, quote unquote, financed so heavily for chairs and research funds by our enemies, to the point that they are not ready now to voice their opinion about this terrible turn of events. So I'm sorry, I cannot extend further time to you, Stuart, even though we wanted to hear some more from you. Stay obviously on the panel. We'll continue on with your permission. Thank you very much. Appreciate your words.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We'll turn now to Ms. Sarit Berman, who is the head of research for the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. I have to tell you that I'm looking forward to some of her insights. The question I'd like to turn to you, please, Sarit, is what has been the performance of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange during the war, and what can we expect for the year 2025 going forward? Sarit, please.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank Israel Bonds and the SRI for inviting TASE to participate in this important webinar. And I would like to thank you all for your time. In 2024, Israel experienced an ongoing war on multiple fronts. TASE demonstrated remarkable resilience, maintaining its vital role in the Israeli economy following the October 7 attack and throughout the most difficult times experienced by the State of Israel. Our readiness to act in an emergency situation enabled us to make the decision to continue trading in a full and normal manner from day to day and continue to do so. As the war evolved, TASE continued to serve as a crucial hub for raising equity and debt for both the public and for public companies and for the Israeli government. The resilience of the Israeli civil society and economy, backed by the strong fundamentals, has enabled us to effectively manage these challenges and emerge stronger. As regards to TASE performances in the past year, after shuffling throughout the first half of 2024, on July, Israel took the initiative for the significant operational activity against Iran and its proxies. It was a turning point in the public confidence, and we saw the reflection on TASE's performances in the second half. In an annual perspective, our leading indices increased significantly in 2024 relative to all global benchmarks, including the US indices, while the shekel was strong and stable. We also saw a 10% increase in equity trading volumes. Bond trading volumes grew by 13%, and the government of Israel successfully raised over 180 billion shekels, demonstrating market confidence despite the downgrading of Israel's credit rating. Global investors view Israel as an investment opportunity. They responded positively to the resilience demonstrated by the Israeli civil society and business community. We've seen renewed foreign investor interest with significant purchases since July, with net equity purchases of 4 billion shekels on TASE. Israel's current strategic position is much better than before the war, and we believe that the global investors realize that and appreciate the growth potential on the Israeli capital market. If we look to 2025, our leading indices increased by 7% until today, and we believe that the Israeli economy will continue to be strong and the stock market will maintain its important role as the platform for raising debt to finance the continued development of the State of Israel. At the end of a difficult and challenging year, we look forward with hope. We see foreign investors gradually returning to the market, and at the same time, we will continue to encourage foreign investments in the Israeli economy. Our hope is that all the hostages will return home safely soon. When this will happen, and when diplomatic arrangements will be reached, it will mark a significant milestone in the national recovery and may increase international investments in the Israeli economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarit. I urge you to come to Israel and then visit her offices downtown Tel Aviv. Very nice building. Thank you very much, Sarit. We continue on to Dr. Eyal Argov, Head of Macroeconomics and Policy Division at the Bank of Israel. The question to you, Dr. Argov, as Head of Macroeconomics and Policy Division, how has the fiscal and monetary policy reacted to the war, and what are the prospects for the Israeli economy on the day after? Please, Dr. Argov.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me to speak here, and thank you very much for the question. I would like to start by reminding the audience that Israel entered the war with a very strong economy. GDP more than recovered from COVID-19, and unemployment was at low levels of 3%, and the debt to GDP ratio, which is a key indicator of fiscal strength, was low at about 60% and in a declining path. Israel also had substantial foreign exchange reserves exceeding $200 billion. Surely, the war caused economic weakness, primarily due to supply-side issues such as the absence of Palestinian workers in the construction sector, a high number of reservist soldiers, and evacuated areas in the north and south of Israel. The war and its fiscal costs led to an increase in the debt to GDP ratio, which reached 69% at the end of this year, and a higher risk premium. In some areas, we have already seen improvements compared to the beginning of the war. It's not surprising because historically, the Israeli economy has shown resilience in recovering quickly from crises, thanks to its flexible economy and a globally unique high-tech sector, which accounts for 18% of GDP. This sector relies on highly skilled labor and strong entrepreneurial capabilities. For instance, Israel's risk premium in the global markets was already cut by 30% compared to the peak, but still remains elevated. I would like to address a few ongoing war-related challenges that Israel faces. First, the war has both immediate and long-term fiscal costs, including military buildup, reconstruction of evacuated areas, and interest payments. Israel's fiscal buffers had helped manage these costs, but to secure fiscal responsibility, significant fiscal steps were required, and the government has already addressed part of the challenge in the 2024 and 2025 budget through substantial fiscal adjustments that amounted to 2% of GDP, part of them by tax increases. The additional security burden impacts labor markets through those serving in the military, both compulsory service and reserve service, at the expense of civilian employment. The economic cost of this additional burden is estimated by us by around $3 billion per year. This cost could be reduced if additional populations, such as the ultra-Orthodox community, will join the service. These are topics that are under public discussions. I would like to continue to the shortage of the workers in the construction sector due to the absence of Palestinian workers. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. If the current ceasefire holds, it will be easier to bring in foreign workers from other countries or to reach arrangements for the return of Palestinian workers. This may take time, but will eventually be resolved. And my last point is about the border areas with Lebanon and Gaza Strips. These areas which were significantly affected by the war and were evacuated for extended periods. These areas are home for about 1% of the Israeli population and require extensive rehabilitation, both for their communities and infrastructure. However, this also presents an opportunity to develop Israel's peripheral areas. To conclude, the Israeli economy still faces challenges, but good policies can also generate opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Argov, for these insights. Some of these fundamentals are very important to know about. Up until now, we have heard from, I'd like to say, the public sector, so to speak. We'd like to turn to the private sector. I'd like to turn to my friend Hanna Pri-Zan, who is a chairperson of the Israeli Experience. Hanna, the question to you is, as a leader and exemplary of women executives in Israel, can you tell us about the economic impact of the war on women in Israel in the day after? Please, Hanna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So it had a few aspects, a few very, very significant economical aspects. First of all is the employment impact. The war has dramatically affected the female labor market. Sectors with high female representation, such as education, tourism, and commerce, were severely impacted. Many women were forced to take unpaid leave or leave their jobs to take care of the children when the education system was shut down, both in the south and in the north of Israel. Many women working in the south and the north of Israel also lost their jobs where they were forced to relocate to another place to live. The second aspect is I would say, double burden. Many women found themselves dealing with double burden while their partners were called up for reserve duty. They had to continue providing for the family while managing childcare and household responsibility without help. This situation created significant financial and emotional pressure. The third aspect is the impact on small business. Women have, I would say, very significant holding in small business. I think it's a global phenomenon, but in Israel as well. The war severely affected these businesses, especially in peripheral areas. Many businesses closed temporarily or permanently, leading significant income loss for families and women. And there was and there is a huge effect on single mothers. Single mothers were particularly affected by the situation. Without family or financial support system, many found themselves in difficult financial situation, especially when forced to stop working to take care of the children. Now, what are the solutions and initiatives that we saw? Despite the challenges, several solutions were seen. Establishment of dedicated assistance funds for economically affected women, remote work initiatives to allow women to continue working side by side of taking care of the family, community support network that assists with the childcare, and adapted professional training programs. And of course, it has a long-term implication, which is potentially winding wage gaps between men and women, difficult returning to workforce, and impact on saving and pensions. And I hope some of the things will be solved in the near future, and women will go back and have a significant role in the Israeli economy.
Thank you very much, Hanna. Your comments are great. Unfortunately, time is short and I cannot come up with follow-up questions. So may I take this opportunity to thank the panel members, Stuart, Sarit, Eyal, and Hanna for an excellent job done. I wish everybody a good afternoon. I noticed that it's about, what is it now, 16 Fahrenheit degrees in New York, but I hope that we gave you some warmth coming from Israel. So thank you very much. I turn back to Michal. Michal, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Menipaz, of course, and the panelists. It was very interesting discussions. And now, to conclude the event, I am honored to have invited one of the most important economists and chief economist advisor at one of the largest banks in Israel, and Professor Economics at Tel Aviv University, Professor Leiderman. Professor Leiderman held several key points at the Bank of Israel in the academic and in the private sector. Among other things, in the past, he was the member of the senior management and director of the research department at the Bank of Israel and published more than 70 articles in professional journalists and wrote or edited 7 books. Please, Professor Leiderman.
Thanks very much, Michal. Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon. I would like to thank Michal and all the organizers on our side, and of course the bonds. It is hard to imagine the Israeli economy and the Israeli society without this magnificent project that is the Israel bonds project. As indicated, we are facing a very challenging time. And what makes it especially challenging is the fact that this is a different war than the previous wars that we had. First of all, it is taking a long time. Comparing to previous wars and episodes of military turbulence, clearly this is taking considerable amount of time. Second, we are facing this war in different fronts, in simultaneously 7 fronts, including, of course, the hostilities that we are facing from Yemen and other places. The hostages phenomenon, of course, is something that we have not seen such a significant amount of civilians, children, soldiers being taken hostages in Gaza. And last but not least, the fact that we had to evacuate some of the population in the northern cities and the southern cities of Israel. So clearly, being this a challenging time, we definitely need and will need the support of projects like this one, like the bonds, the Israel bonds, and of different governments and the different entities, in order to make sure that we overcome the difficulties and we recover as quickly as possible. As indicated by this distinguished panel and by the previous speakers, there is one word that describes, in my view, what has been going on, and this word is resilience. Resilience, and we are seeing resilience all over the place. The Israel economy has not entered the recession. We had a bad time, of course, in the last quarter of 2023, which reminded many of us of the second quarter of 2020 with the pandemic, where there were lockdowns and there was some sort of a paralysis of economic activity. But from the first quarter of last year up until now, the economy has been recovering. Of course, the damage to the economy has been quite selective. Needless to speak, hotel industry, tourism, and many other sectors like those have been severely affected. But on the other hand, we see the agility, we see the vitality of the Israeli economy with many engines of growth that are working and that will continue to work as time goes by. As someone that is in academia, also in the private sector, as a chief economic advisor of Bank Hapoalim, in touch, of course, with the authorities at the Bank of Israel and the Ministry of Finance, I can tell you that the private sector in Israel, which is the main source and is going to be the main source of recovery in the economy, is fully preparing itself for the time of recovery, for the end of the war or the reaching of some stability in terms of the military and security situation. As indicated by some of the speakers before, the real estate and construction sector is suffering from the severe lack of working hands, given the fact that at the start of the war we had 75,000 Palestinians, and they are no longer with us for the construction sector. So we are relying on about 40,000 foreign workers that are coming mainly from Asia. And still there is more to come, because clearly the needs are quite significant. But having said that, and in spite of the severe difficulties and limitations, the real estate sector is preparing itself, is making business plans and strategic plans for 1, 2, and 3 years to make sure that if and when things become relatively more stable, they will jump into the different opportunities. And one important message that we can convey to foreign investors, to domestic investors, and so on, there are going to be plenty of new business opportunities in Israel. We need a lot of investment in infrastructures, physical infrastructures, technological infrastructures. We will need lots of reconstruction in the areas of the south and the north. We need relocation of some of the people that have been evacuated. In general, there is an excess demand for housing in the housing market, and we have a very we have a situation of excess demand. Young families, young households are being formed every year, and we need more and more, of course, apartments and houses to be constructed. So we have a lot of reconstruction, a lot of recovery there. We are strong believers in the combination of defense and tech. And in fact, some of the leading Israeli geniuses in terms of the startup nation are precisely working on that combination, the combination of, how do you use the most advanced technologies to strengthen your military resilience, your defense resilience. And this is attracting a lot of investments, not only from Israel, but also from abroad. Of course, the high-tech sector is recovering and has recovered very nicely. There are new funds that are being collected from abroad, and new venture capital and new private equity coming in. And so all what remains is to be hopeful that this war will end as soon as possible, that we will finally get a situation where there is more stability, and that we can prepare Israel for a new era of very significant growth, very dynamic growth, with lots of aliyah, immigration from Jews from the rest of the world, and with a restoration of some of the international relations with some of our trading partners, some of these relations that have been sort of disturbed by the current events. So we remain optimistic. We believe in Israel. We believe in the Jewish people all over the world. We are all working together. And yes, once again, there is going to be the day after, and that day after can prepare the foundations for a stronger and safer Israel for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Leiderman. In conclusion, today webinar provide value insights into the resilience and the future of the Israeli economy. We heard from distinguished speakers with experience in both security and economy, the highlights and the challenges, opportunities facing Israel. I think that we can see a lot of aspects about the resilience, and as Professor Leiderman said, there is a lot of points of growing the economy. I think also the discussions empathize the importance of national and the economy resilience in the navigating uncertain times. Of course, like the panelists said before, Sarit, it's important to see also the resilience when we saw our hostages back home, Romy, Doron, and Emily, and I think we can see that it will influence also our economy. We are grateful to all of the speakers and the participants in the webinar, and thank you for all joining us today. Shalom.